Hi, welcome to Story Time with Rohini. Today I will narrate an Indian folk tale called Why the Fish Laughed. Once upon a time, a queen was looking out of her chamber when the fisherwoman passed by the palace. The fisherwoman's basket had lots of fish, big fish, small fish, and very beautiful fish. The queen was impressed with the varieties of fishes in the basket, and she called to the fisherwoman. The fisherwoman came to the queen and asked what the queen would want to buy. And then the queen said that she wanted to buy a she-fish which is very big. The fisherwoman looked in all her basket, and there was one fish right at the bottom which was jumping up and down. The queen looked at the fish and said, "If this is a she-fish, I would like to have her." And then the fisherwoman said that it is not a she-fish, but it is a he-fish. And then the fish laughed. The fish laughed out loud, and it was something like this. Ha 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 ha. And the queen heard it loud and clear, and she was most surprised, and she was also offended because she thought it was very rude that the fish should laugh at her. The fisherwoman went her way, and the queen went fuming to her bedchamber. That night, when the king came, she immediately shared the incident with the king, and she said that she wanted to know why the fish laughed. The king at first said that it is impossible for a fish to laugh and that the queen must have imagined it. But the queen was so insistent that the king called his prime minister, the vizier, and asked him to find out why the fish laughed. The prime minister was also surprised and said that it could not have happened, but the queen told it in such a way that all of them believed it. And so the king gave the prime minister 6 months' time to find out why the fish laughed, failing which he said that he will execute the prime minister. The prime minister set out to find out why the fish laughed. He traveled far and wide. He met scholars, he met magicians, he met sorcerers, he met tricksters. He asked so many people in the kingdom as to why the fish laughed, but he could not find the reason. 5 months passed like this, and the prime minister decided that anyways the king would execute him. So there's no point in wasting time here and there. So he thought he would rather go home and spend it in settling his affairs. One of the things he wanted to do was tell his son to travel the world. So as soon as he reached home, he called his son, who was a very handsome young man, and told him that he had to travel the world. And the son, being a clever boy, set out immediately. He thought that if he traveled far enough and tried hard enough, he could find out probably the reason as to why the fish laughed and save his father. So he started traveling. And he did not travel on his horse, but he started traveling on foot. As he walked by and by, he came across a village where he saw a farmer walking. He found the farmer very pleasant company and joined the farmer. And the day was hot and long, and they were hungry. And as the prime minister's son was walking along with the farmer, he said, "Dear farmer, it being such a hot day, maybe the journey would be pleasanter if we give a lift to each other. Why don't we carry each other for a while?" he said. The farmer laughed, and he said that the prime minister's son, being a handsome young man, probably is out of his mind to suggest that the farmer should carry the prime minister's son, and vice versa. So he didn't say anything, but they walked on. And after a while, they came across a huge cornfield whose who was which was ready to be harvested, and the golden corns were swaying in the sun, in the evening sun. As they were swaying in the evening sun, the Prime Minister's son looked at it, and he said that he wondered if the corns had already been eaten or not. This was again very strange for the farmer, and the farmer wondered if the young man, the handsome young man, was really in the right state of mind, or was he mad? But he didn't understand the question, so he just said, "I don't know," and they went on. Now evening fell, and they were nearly reaching the farmer's village, but it was a little far. So they had to cross a city before they reached the farmer's village. So as soon as they entered the city, they started looking for food. There was no food anywhere, but in a mosque there was a huge gathering where people sat down and ate. And not one of the people in the mosque saluted the farmer or the Prime Minister's son, or did they invite them to share their meal. And then the Prime Minister's son said, "What a big cemetery this is." And the farmer was amused at what the Prime Minister's son was saying, but he didn't bother. He just laughed and they proceeded on their way. Next, they came to a graveyard. After crossing the city, they came to a graveyard. And in the graveyard, people were offering respect to their dead, and they were distributing food in memory of their dead. They called to the farmer and the Prime Minister's son, and they offered food to the farmer and the Prime Minister's son. And then the Prime Minister's son ate to his heart's content, and he said, "What a lovely city this is! How wonderful the people here are!" And then the farmer was again very surprised and thought probably the Prime Minister's son will call the land water and water land very soon, and he'll call darkness light and light darkness, and he could not understand what was going on. And then after taking rest for a while, the farmer and the Prime Minister's son started walking towards the farmer's village again. And after the cemetery, they had to pass through a small stream, a brook, to reach the farmer's village. The farmer, as soon as he reached the brook, removed his footwear and his pajamas and walked into the water. And then it was the Prime Minister's son's turn, and he waded into the water with his shoes and pajamas on. And then the farmer thought, "This man is definitely a fool, because I have never ever seen any person, alive or dead, walk into a brook full of water with their sandals and pajamas on," he thought, and he laughed. And he was very, amused with the fellow, that he invited him to stay in his house for as long as he stayed in the village. And then the Prime Minister's son asked, "I would love to stay with you, dear farmer, but I hope the beams of your house are very strong." And the farmer could not understand, and laughing, he went into his house, and he was still laughing when his daughter came to him, and she asked him what made the farmer laugh so much. And then the farmer said, "I have a very handsome young fellow traveling with me, but he's slightly, off in his head. And I don't know whether he's stupid or clever, but his words amuse me," he said. So the farmer's daughter asked, what exactly did the traveler say that amused her father so much? And then he said, "He accompanied me to the village, and when I told him that he can stay in a house for as long as he wished, he asked me if the beams of a house were strong. How are the beams concerned with him staying in a house?" said the farmer, and he laughed. Now the farmer's daughter was a very wise girl, and she said, "Daddy, he just wanted to inquire if we can afford his stay in our house, if we can afford to feed him and keep him in our house." And the farmer said, "Of course I can afford. If this means this, then there were so many other things on the way which I did not understand. Kindly clarify that for me, daughter," he said. And the daughter asked him. So the farmer said, when we first met each other, we walked just a few paces when the young man suggested that we carry each other and give each other a lift. And then the farmer's daughter said, that's a very good thing. Giving a lift to the other person means narrating a story to pass away time and to make this journey seem easy, she said. And then the farmer said, oh, if that is the reason, I would also want you to clarify the next part for me. We were crossing a cornfield which was fully grown and ready for harvest, and the prince asked if it was eaten or not. The corn was there in the field, so how come it is eaten? Then the farmer's daughter said he just wanted to know if the owner of the field was in debt or not, because if he is in debt, his creditors will take away all the corn and it is as good as eaten. And then the farmer said, after that we went to a city where it was highly populated and people were feasting everywhere, and he called it a cemetery. And then the farmer's daughter said, probably nobody gave you food there, father? And the father said, yes, nobody gave us food. And then the farmer's daughter said, if in a whole city you don't care for another human being and don't provide food, they're all as good as dead. That's why he called it a cemetery, she said. And then the farmer said, in the graveyard they were distributing food, and he said it is a populated city, and now I know that even in a graveyard we could find kindness, so probably he called it a city. Is that so, daughter? He said. And then the daughter said, yes, father, anywhere where another person receives kindness is called a city. And then the farmer said, this one last thing I want to clarify. When we came to our brook, he waded into it with his sandals and pajamas on. And then the farmer's daughter said, I always found it extremely stupid, father, that people should remove their boots and pajamas and wade into water. We don't know what lies on the waterbed. The waterbed can have stones, sharp objects, and one wrong footfall and you go headlong into the water. That it's better to wet your shoes and walk safely on the waterbed than put yourself at so much risk and spoil your feet and hurt your feet, said the daughter. And then the daughter and the farmer were very impressed with the young man, and the daughter said, Dad, now please invite him to our house. Let us host him, she said. And just before the farmer was about to set out, she called a messenger and gave the messenger a bowl full of ghee, 12 chapatis, and a jar full of milk. And then she sent a message to the young man saying that our beams are very, very strong because the moon is full, there are 12 months in a year, and the sea is overflowing with water, she said. Now the messenger was taking the food to the young man when he met his little son. And the little son, looking into the basket, wanted to taste some. So he was jumping up and down and he pestered his father till he gave him some. And the messenger gave some food to the little boy. And then went on to the prince and went on to the prime minister's son and gave him the message of the farmer's daughter as well as the food. And the young man, the prime minister's son, enjoyed the food, but sent back the messenger saying that the moon is new. I can find only 11 months in a year, and the sea is definitely not overflowing with water. It has very little water. And the moment the messenger came home, the farmer's daughter understood what happened, and she blasted him, and she sent the farmer personally to call the young man home. The young man came home and they had a very good time for a few days when the prime minister's son narrated why he actually set out. And then the farmer's daughter said, it is very easy to know why the fish laughed. The fish laughed because the queen was insisting on having a she-fish, but there is a man in her chamber who is plotting against the king. The fish knew this and the fish laughed. She said. And the Prime Minister's son was very relieved. He said, "Oh, for the joy of me! Thank goodness I found out the answer. I'll immediately rush back and let the king know this," he said. So he borrowed a horse and he rode back and he told his father. Now his father, the Prime Minister, went and told the king. And the king said it is impossible and he wanted to check the truth. So the vizier or the Prime Minister got a huge pit dug and asked all the maids in the queen's chamber to jump over it. All of them failed except one. One could jump across the pit successfully. And the Prime Minister caught that maid and they found out that it was a man from the other kingdom who was plotting against the king's life. The queen was very much surprised, and now she knew that the fish had laughed because she was insisting on a she-fish when there was already a man hiding in her chamber, and that thought made the fish laugh. She realized, and she was happy because she found the answer. The king was happy because the queen was happy, and the Prime Minister's life was spared, and the Prime Minister's son was also very happy. And as soon as the punishment of the Prime Minister was cancelled, the Prime Minister got his son and the farmer's daughter married, and they lived a happy life for many long years. Thank you.